Greetings all, Fireman 601 here. Welcome back to Microsoft Flight Simulator, and welcome to DarkStar. Yes, I've had a couple of questions about this airplane in terms of not what it is, because it is an entirely fictional, in big air quotes, airplane, but a couple of questions about how do you fly this thing, because it's just, well, it is what it is. You can see what it looks like. I suppose you could say it bears a passing resemblance to the SR-71 Blackbird, but it is quite different. And again, it is fictional. How fictional is it really? Well, of course, it was made to feature in the fictional movie Top Gun. However, does it look a little bit too realistic for comfort? Maybe a little bit. Is that because they're drawing on the SR-71 design? Quite probably, but is it also because maybe there's something quite like it already in our skies? Yeah, I'm going to say that that's fairly likely. Regardless of what it actually is or isn't, how do you fly it? Because it's very different from any other aircraft that you'll find in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And the first thing that you'll notice about it is you come into the cockpit and there is no front window. You cannot see directly ahead. You've got these two rather large windows to each side, but you cannot see directly ahead on this airplane, which means that landing in particular is quite difficult. You do have some technological tools at your disposal, but you cannot see directly ahead, which does make things a little bit interesting. However, we're cold and dark here in the cockpit, so we'll go through our power-up, and then we will take off and take you through a flight profile up to, we'll probably hit about 220, 230,000 here today. First thing that you need to do, you need electrical power in this airplane. So this little switch on this front center panel off down to the right-hand side, just to the right of the stick, you can see this switch here. We'll flip that up, and we have power on board. You'll hear the cabin ventilation start to come on as well. And now we have electrical power on board. You can see our instrument panels have come up and all kinds of stuff has come up. What else has come up? You've got your center display here, and you have 3 pages on this display. This year, I will call this the primary flight display. You can see that we have got a display out ahead. There's a camera on the front of the airplane that is giving us a view. It's not really an out-the-window view. It is a computer-synthesized view. Obviously, you can see we're on runway 31 here. We're at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, by the way. But you do see the runway, you do see the horizon, you do generally see the ground. When there are water features, you see the water, you see coastlines, you see things like that. So it's okay, but you don't see major landmarks. You don't see cities and things like that. You see terrain features, and that's about it. So be mindful of that. You might be flying low, overpopulated area. There are buildings there, and you will hit them, so be careful. Second page, we have got a fuel display, so you can see fuel pumps here for our jet fuel as well as our hydrogen. This airplane has 4 engines. It has 2 gas turbine jets, as you would expect, but it also has 2 scram jets, and they are running off of a hydrolox mixture, I believe. It's pulling the oxygen from the atmosphere, but it is also running on board liquid hydrogen in here. And you'll see that we have got fuel tanks here for our hydrogen tanks and our main fuel tanks there on our center schematic, and it's reiterated here. Got an artificial horizon on this page as well if you want to use it, but not really necessary. And then this page, page 3, this gives you a flight profile that you can run. However, it does not mean that you need to do this in order to get up to Mach 9, 10, whatever it is that you want to do. This is showing you a generalized profile that you can run if you want. They've got you starting from takeoff and then climbing out to about 30,000 feet there at a 30-degree nose-up attitude. You'll go supersonic at about 30K, and then you'll dive at 20 degrees, and then you'll pull back up, and you fly these 2 parabolas basically on your way up to max cruising altitude at around Mach 10 at 200 to 250, 270,000 feet. We're not going to do this. I don't find this to be strictly necessary. This doesn't really have you going into the scram jets until top end Mach 4. You can get into the scram jets at around Mach 3 if you want, provided that you're high enough and that you have got a good enough nose-up attitude to do that. However, before all that, we need to get back to our primary flight display. start our auxiliary power unit. The APU is right here. These two switches labeled start and stop, and you see standby, ready, run, and off. Just hit that start one. It immediately goes to standby. The APU firing up behind us. Might be able to hear that a little bit. And the sun is really blocking this out, but the APU start switch will illuminate with ready once the APU is running. And once the APU is running, we can start the engines. There's no separate starter that you need to engage here. You've just got these two switches for the left and right engine respectively. They have 3 positions, on, off, and motor. If you just want to spin the engines up, you'll flip that to motor. Or if you want to start the engines, you flip that to on, and it will remain in the on position. The starters will automatically disengage, the fuel valves will open, and the engines will light up. So we'll just flip both of those to on. We'll go over to this display where we've got our engines, and you'll see they're already spooling up. We've got a light off, got exhaust gas temperature on the right. Now peak 683 on both. And they'll idle at around 65, 66% N1. To the left-hand side of this display, you have got our Scram Doors. Obviously, we can't start the Scram jets at this moment. However, when we do start the Scrams with this switch later on in flight, you'll see that those doors will open and we'll get the Scram jet flow through. Generators right here behind these two covers. Flip these switches up and you can run off of the engine's generator power. At this point, you can shut down the APU if you want. Don't have to. And the airplane is now running off of the engines. Engine reset switches. If for some reason you have a flame out in flight, you'll need to toggle these so that you can get the engines restarted. Landing light switch over here, no problem. Landing gear, you got a primary and backup for the landing gear. Unfortunately, you can't actually change between the channels, but you do have an emergency gear extend switch right there. If for some reason you're cold and dark in flight and you need to drop the gear by gravity, you could do that. Other than that, though, we got our display options. Just day and night, basically, it's a brightness setting. You can also adjust the brightness on these displays manually with these two switches here for the left and right screens. Radios up here. We won't really be using radios today, but you can if you want. Emergency fuel transfer is inoperable. Emergency hydrogen dump is inoperable. And the center of gravity fore to aft is also inoperable. This is something that you would want to pay attention to, but the airplane seems to do that automatically, and it works pretty well. Throttle over here. We only have 2 throttles despite having 4 engines. The throttles control all 4 engines, and they will just hand off between the scram jets and the turbines as needed, basically. So with our engines running, the turbine engines running, not the scrams, we will release our brakes and we will punch it all the way up to full afterburner for takeoff. There we go. That's full military power. And now we're full afterburner. Acceleration comes up quick. There goes 100, 150, 200 knots. We'll rotate. Off the deck at about 245, we'll raise the gear. And I'm going to come out of afterburner here just for a little bit, just so we can get our bearings.
Experimental 601, continue for west departure.
Going to idle power for a moment. We'll just cruise around for a sec.
Experimental 601, leaving my airspace frequency change approved.
Just tell them that we're gone, and then we will not be talking to anybody for the rest of the flight.
Foxtrot 601 frequency change.
Okay, so initially for takeoff and climb out, I find that if you need to do any maneuvering straight off the deck, do that at low speed and low altitude. It flies a little bit sluggishly, but it actually is fairly maneuverable, all things considered, especially given the radical shape of this airplane. We're basically going to fly due east off the coast here. There's 090 thereabout. That's good. We'll punch back up into afterburner. and we will start our climb out. We will be in full afterburner the whole time now. They've got us doing a climb at about nose up of 30 degrees. You can do that if you want. As you can see, the airspeed is still increasing. And now I'm off the stick. The airplane is going to trim itself pretty well. You will have to adjust your pitch every now and again, obviously, but we're already through 7,000 feet. And you can see that the Earth is already starting to disappear a little bit behind us. There goes 10,000. Airspeed and true airspeed having a discrepancy already. Ground speed and, of course, airspeed having the typical discrepancies that you would get. And that will only get bigger, of course, as we continue to ascend. Our rate of climb is about 23,000 feet per minute, 22,500 actually. And I haven't touched the stick. The airplane is pretty stable here. It's just trimming by itself. I am going to start to nose over, though. 25,000. Start to nose over to about 15 degrees or so, nose up. Rate of climb has dropped now to about 11,000 per minute, as you would expect. And there's 30,000 feet. Now, we are about to start to get into our first parabola. So, the flight profile that it shows you here on page 3, it says that you need to get up to 30,000 feet, nose down at 20 degrees, or you can go inverted and do the same thing. I'm not going to go inverted. I really don't see the need to do that. I haven't been doing that on my other flights, and it has been quite okay. However, we're going to get up to about 39, 40K, and then we are going to nose over. We're still in full afterburner, and will remain in full afterburner this whole time. So there's 40K, and we're at 0.71 Mach. I'm going to start nosing down. There's the horizon, and now we start the pitch over. So we're going down, get about half a G negative, and we'll go nose down to around 22 to 25 degrees. I'm now off the stick again, and the airplane's going to trim. Watch the Mach meter. We're going to break the Mach in a couple of seconds here. Mach 1, okay. There's 32,000 feet. Mach 1.3. 1.4. 1.5 will pitch up. And full nose back. The airplane will limit itself to 3.5 G's pitch up. So that's fine. 18,000 feet. There's the horizon. 17.7 is where we arrested descent. That's fine. And we'll just pull up. We'll do nose up to around 22, 25 degrees or so. Went off the stick, and I'm completely off the stick again. We're at 25 degrees nose up. Mach 1.5. And we're just going to gain altitude here. If all goes well, we should remain supersonic. And we're going to climb up to around 60 to 70,000. There goes 40K. Mach 1.5 still. 0.50, 0.49, 45,000. And you can really start to see the curvature of the Earth. 50,000. 1.36. And still decelerating a bit. I'm going to start to nose down. Nose down to about 12 to 15 degrees. The airplane wants to trim a little bit more aggressively, so I'm having to keep some pressure on the stick. 60,000 feet. And I'm off the stick again, and the airplane seems pretty happy with this. However, you'll notice that we are nowhere near hypersonic velocity yet. We need to do a second parabola, and we're going to nose over once we get back down to Mach 1. 0.05, 0.04, we're going to nose down. Velocity vector now is below the horizon. You'll also notice at these higher altitudes the arrow is quite different, so just be mindful of that. We'll nose down to about 30 degrees, and obviously we're accelerating again. And I am now off the stick. You want to stay in this about 30-degree nose-down attitude until your true airspeed there is in excess of 1,000 knots. So there's 940,000 feet, rather 42,000 feet. There's 1,000 knots. All right, Mach meter is showing 1.85. I'm going to pitch up at Mach 2. Ready? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Mach 2, pitch up. We are full pull back on the stick. The airplane, again, is going to limit itself to 3.5 Gs. That's no problem. 22,000 feet. Nose is coming past the horizon. Still accelerating in this pitch up. 1,500 knots true airspeed. Pitching back up, and we are climbing at about 20,000 and a half. Do the same as before in our first parabola. We'll do about 25 degrees nose up. Goes about 29, 30 degrees nose up. A little bit of forward pressure on the stick, but notice our airspeed is going crazy here. We are still accelerating even though we're in a 25-degree climb. Mach 3.61. 60,000 feet. Because we're at Mach 3.5, right next to our battery switch, we have this switch. For our hydrogen fuel cells. Enable that. Scram enable. Flip the switch up. Scrams are lit. See the doors are now opening up. 50 degrees. Wait for the scrams to light properly. 61 degrees on the doors. And there are the scrams. Scrams are up. The turbines will shut down at this point. And just watch that Mach meter go. Mach 4. 115,000 feet, climbing at almost 100,000 feet per minute. Turbine engines have shut down. True airspeed 2,600 knots, Mach 4.35. $160,000 feet. I'm going to start pitching down a little bit. 20 degrees. Pitch it down a little more. Mach 5. And here really comes the acceleration. Getting plasma out the window in a moment, you'll see. 200,000 feet. Mach 7. And starting to get that plasma out the window. There's Mach 9. Mach 9.5. That's 220,000 feet. Mach 9.85. Yeah. Flashes you see out the window, that is plasma caused by the shock heating with the atmosphere. We are hypersonic, and we are moving. Ground speed is 5,634 knots. Dropping a little bit, that's okay. Mach 9.95. At this point, if we go outside, yes, we're effectively at the edge of space. The Kármán line is 328,000 feet, but there, just in the distance, is the coast of Florida. This is not too dissimilar from what Alan Shepard would have seen on his first space flight. It's pretty crazy. Obviously, we're a bit lower than Mr. Shepard was, but going a little bit faster, at least for a lot of his ascent. And there is that shock heating there on the leading edges of the airplane. If you're flying at night, the whole airplane is incandescent. The sunlight is bleaching a lot of that out right now, but this thing is mighty hot. (253, 254,000 feet). There's Mach 10 proper. Beautiful. Now, we will try to keep our nose level. Obviously, the pitch of the nose and the velocity vector are effectively coupled at this point. There's just so much inertia carrying us. So into a slight descent. And you can maneuver at these altitudes and these speeds. What I'm going to do is I am going to flip us around. And you can do knife edge flight up here if you want. I'll roll to about 90 degrees, aileron roll to the right, and I can bring in my rudder. And with just very light pressure on a rudder, I'm able to control our rate of ascent and descent just by flipping the nose up and down. Obviously, quite a lot of G-force up here, Mach 9.97. But if you control your roll with the aileron, and you balance that with your rudder to control pitch, you can actually control your descent rate up here in a knife edge situation with the rudder. It's kind of cool. However, we're going to roll back out of this and go into our turn. We're off of the rudder now completely. And for most turns, obviously your turning circle is the size of a medium-sized country when you're going this fast. But just with your turns, just do it with the ailerons. It's a very slow rate of turn, but you do get the turn, and it works quite obviously. Down here on the PFD, the lower right, you've got yourself your compass, and your route of flight will be loaded into there as well. Basically want to fly around to about 270 on a heading. 510 nautical miles away from the shuttle landing facility at Kennedy Space Center, which is our destination in mind. So we're going to be in this turn for quite a while, but as you can see, she's stable here. There is no semblance of autopilot whatsoever on this thing. There's just not enough time for that. But you can see that it is stable. I can even dial in a little bit of pitch if I want, sort of increase that rate of turn, but obviously we start to get up close to 3.5 Gs there, which is the limit on the airframe. The aircraft will limit itself pretty effectively, though, so you don't overstress things. But we'll just stay in this gradual turn. Go outside, the cameras will completely glitch out at high altitudes like this. The altitude limit in the sim is 275,000 feet. We're at 266 and change, so obviously you're going to get some issues with that, but there you go. You can get a sense here of how much of the airplane actually glows. We're on the opposite of our sunlit side at the moment. That nose is properly white hot. Bit of descent. And as you can see, because we have no forward vision really, you're just flying off of the PFD the whole time. And that's fine. Getting a little bit lower than I would like, so we'll just gradually bring the nose back up above the horizon. 240,000 feet. You can maneuver a little bit more harshly if you would like. I am fully back on the stick now. The airplane, again, is just going to limit itself to 3.5 Gs. controlling my pitch now with aileron angle. I'm fully back on the stick. There's 180 degrees, so we have turned 1/4 of the arc around the compass. We want roughly 270. Beeping you here is caution for the G. And astronauts on Falcon 9 are pulling 4, 4.5. So 3.5 for an elite pilot, not a problem. Airspeed is still holding around 5490 knots. Mach is 9.98. And we are just flying this low-flying spacecraft. It's pretty remarkable. Back up into Mach 10. We are starting once more to close the distance to the Kennedy Space Center. Heading bug will come up. Go. It looks like it's asking for around 320 or so. We'll fly 320. In the 27 minutes since we started the video, and probably less than 20 minutes aloft, we've already covered over 700 nautical miles. Cover distances real quick in this thing. Transatlantic from New York to London, probably about 25 minutes. And at that speed, remember, you're also countering the rotation of the Earth. So you will actually make the sun set in the east if you fly for long enough. It's pretty remarkable. Still around Mach 10. Almost to our heading. We've probably encircled most of the Caribbean at this point, just in this turn. But as you'll see, we'll close this distance back up pretty quickly. Just about back on course, call it like 315. Alright. Roll out of it. You can roll out of these turns pretty quickly. And you can see on the PFD, I mentioned that it shows terrain features, and indeed it does. We're seeing some islands there, probably the Bahamas. Can't quite identify which islands they are, but almost certainly the Bahamas, just based on our general geography. Just make this very slight correction to center that heading bug. There we are. Back to wings level. And you'll notice that we have a little bit of oscillation here on the aileron axis. It's normal. It's just the airplane constantly making little trim adjustments in aileron trim. 490 nautical miles, mark 490. That distance will close really quickly. And we go outside, obviously, and you can see those are those islands we were seeing on a PFD. Certainly the Bahamas. I do see the island of Freeport, and beyond that I see the coastline of Florida. There's Grand Bahama. So yeah, lots of geography going on here, and we're crossing a lot of geography real quickly. Yeah, there's our camera starting to go a little bit crazy again. Yeah. It's doing that elevation change all by itself because we're at 257,000 feet at Mach 10. A little bit of course correction needed now. 350 nautical miles mark. Distance is covered very quickly. Now, in terms of top of descent, because obviously we've got to come back home, I have been, in general, starting my descent at around 200 nautical miles out, because you'll see once we come off of the scram jets, the scrams are at full power and they have been this whole time. When we come off of the scrams, drag takes over really fast. We've got all that shock heating on the outside of the airframe. There's a reason for that. That is aerodynamic drag coming in, trying to slow us down. Once that happens, so we take away our engine power, you're going to see that drag come in. And we'll drop from Mach 10 down to below Mach 7, Mach 6 pretty quickly. However, you're still going to be doing Mach 5.5 or so, and you're covering ground really quick. So about 200 nautical miles seems to be the happy place to start the top of descent. What we're going to do is we're going to bring the scrams to idle, and then we're going to shut them down. We're going to glide for a short time before the turbines come back up. They'll come back up automatically. And then we will do a powered turbine landing. More or less like a conventional airplane. It's 210 nautical miles, stand by to go to idle thrust. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 200. Idle thrust. And look at that Mach meter. Mach 9. 8.5. 8. 7.5. 7. There's 6.5. Haven't touched the stick at all. Shut down the scrams. Scrams are off and the doors are closed and the turbines will restart automatically. Mach 5.6. Mach 5. 160 nautical miles out. So I can see the Cape on the PFD. I'm just going to start to nose over so that our velocity vector more or less covers the Cape. Obviously, this is going to be greatly determined on your geographical familiarity with the area you're in. This is generally my testing ground, so I know where I am. But your preferred part of the world obviously will be different. Point the velocity vector a little bit above where it strictly needs to be, and that's fine. I just want to make sure that we cover the distance. 130 nautical miles out. We will cover that distance without much of a problem. Idle thrust on the turbines. Won't really do all that much at this altitude anyway. We're still 240,000 feet. Mach 4.5. Pretty wild. Pretty wild. $230,000 mark. And below, you can see this center panel. We have got a camera in the belly of the airplane. Obviously, that would be designed to take reconnaissance pictures, which I would assume is the purpose of this airplane. Not really functional as far as we're concerned, but it's there and you can see the ground through it. Down through Mach 4 mark. 195,000 feet. 80 nautical miles out. 190,000. There's the coast of Florida out the window. We are still about 130,000 feet above those cloud tops. Mach 3.7, and obviously as we start to get into the thicker areas of the atmosphere, we're going to start to drop speed off more quickly. You'll also hear more air outside the airplane. You can start to hear the engines again now. .6, actually starting to accelerate a little bit again, just off of gravity. And you're going to start to hear the air outside. $100,000 feet. Now what I'm going to do on this approach is I'm going to fly a beam to the east of the shuttle landing facility, turn and land on runway 15. So on a scope there, I don't know if you can see it, but the shuttle landing facility just came into view. So 50,000 mark. Speed is dropping off like crazy. Gonna fly just a beam to the east, 40,000 feet. We're still at over Mach 2. So the ground is still zooming by. There's 30,000 feet. Now, unlike the space shuttle, we don't have what they call the HAC, the heading alignment cone. But I generally know where I am, so we don't really need it. We're also not going to be descending in quite as controlled a fashion as the space shuttle while making that final turn. But there we go, flying just a beam. We're about to go subsonic. And there we are, subsonic. Outside, rock the wing a bit. There's the shuttle landing facility, right where it should be. So now we can start to use our engines again. And just like that, we are now a conventional airplane once again. Gonna continue our descent rather steeply. Plenty of gas left. Coming up on 10,000. There's 10,000 feet. So at this point, bring the nose basically back up to the horizon. Want to maintain a slight rate of descent, and we're just going to start to turn more or less as we would in a more conventional aircraft. You can really pull on it now, and it will turn without much complaint. There's the shuttle landing facility. Fly a little bit more of a base leg, I suppose you can call it. Look out the window. What a concept. We're a bit close in. The problem is it's difficult to judge distances when you don't have a direct view out the window. So no matter. Distance ourselves a little bit more. There we go. Trim is caught up with us again. You notice velocity vector was basically down toward the ground in that little maneuver. Could call that a stall, I suppose, but no stall indication given. Fly back out a little bit. Not necessary to do it for too long because, well, you've got yourself a lot of speed here. Alright, so we've got ourselves some distance once again. And there it is. Now there are no flaps, no spoilers that you operate on the airplane. So the only thing you have to drop speed is drag and your landing gear. So we're at 3,500 feet. Landing speed's going to be about 200 knots. Right about bang on will be our main gear touchdown speed. So you'll want to keep the engines to some degree of spooled up for your approach. You basically want to drop that velocity vector right on the end of the runway. And then make your rate of descent adjustments with your throttles. Drop the gear. Gear down, 3 green. All right, it's 1,000 feet. It's 500, 300, 200, flare. It's easy to overflare. I don't like this. We're going around. Gear up. Punch up the burners. Yeah, difficult to land this thing. It doesn't have the best response in pitch at lower speeds. So basically, you can get an okay approach, and then at the last moment in your flare, as you go to pull out of the flare, what it does is it keeps flaring, and then now you're climbing again. So you really need to be on speed and you know, have some fuel in reserve. If you don't like what you're seeing, pull out of it. So climb up a bit, idle thrust. So we're just going to turn and land on runway 15. Here we are once again. Gear down speed can be about 300 knots. We're already a bit below that, as you can see. It is also a little bit difficult to get a bead on exactly where the runway is until you're almost on top of it. This would be a lot easier if you could actually see out the window, but we really can't, so we must deal with it. There's 2,000 feet. Gear coming. Gear down. $500, $400, $300, $200, $100, idle, main gear down, nose gear down, no thrust reverse, so we'll just wheel brake it. Do our wheel brakes to about 20 knots or so, and we'll turn around off the wheel brakes. We'll back taxi to where we can park it up. At this point, fuel cell, turn that off. Our APU is running. And our two engines are still running. The Scram shut down a long time ago, and we did that with this switch here, in case you don't remember. The Scrams will only operate above Mach 3 anyway. So as soon as you drop below that speed, the Scrams just flame out. I'm keenly aware that some of you are going to say, your taxi speed is 86 knots. Well, first of all, the ground speed is 75, and this is a 15,000-foot runway, so I'm not exactly looking to sit here for too long. But our turn-off point is right about here. Get it slowed up, turn off of the runway. And of course you can also see that we have taxiway markings and runway markings and stuff on our PFD. There's our hold short line. But you don't have any ground objects modeled, so no buildings, no vehicles. So it's a little bit difficult. Just going to turn over here onto this part of the apron. Hope there's no airplane in front of us. Or a bus. Hey, bus. And just park it up. So we'll stop. Parking brakes are set. The APU is on. We'll shut down our generators. And we'll shut down our engines. Just flip these two switches to the off position. Watch them spool down. It's about that. Shut down the APU. Hit the stop switch. Shows run for a moment, and then it will go to off. Here it's spooling down. And it now displays off. We shut down our battery. And she's turned off, just like that. Take a look outside. And we are back on the ground, on the Florida coast, like nothing ever happened. But generally, that is how you fly DarkStar. You do not have to follow that ridiculous trajectory that they show you on the PFD. You can if you want. It works, but what we did also works, and might be a little bit quicker, a little bit easier, and it serves the same function in the end, so what's the difference? But there it is, DarkStar. Fictional? Yes. Fantasy? No, not in my opinion. It's certainly a believable sort of aircraft. Could something be manned and really do Mach 10? I mean, yes, we have manned vehicles that do more than double that speed, but they fly in space. They're not aircraft, per se. The Space Shuttle kind of was, but designed for flight in space for the most part. Something like this, certainly feasible, probably would be a UAV, if I had to guess, but we also did have aircraft like the X-15, which also was more of a spacecraft, but it flew in the atmosphere for the most part, and the SR-71. So, is it real? Is it not? Officially, it's not real. Officially, we've got nothing that's manned that's capable of atmospheric flight that can do anything remotely close to this, but I don't know. Let's let the trappings of speculation take us. But that's how you fly this thing in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and it's very interesting. It's a lot of fun. And it's just cool to take this thing up to the limits of the atmosphere as far as the simulator is concerned, and just cover a lot of distance real fast. Again, I think you could do New York to London in under half an hour, which is pretty insane. And I might have to do that sometime. But until next time, that has been all I've got for you today. Ferrari Man 601 saying thank you very much for watching, and of course, we will see you soon.